All right, that was such a great discussion. Thank you so much, Pamela. You know, the RAP is really the next big thing, so we're looking forward to further updates. So next, we're pleased to introduce our next panel, Connecting Ecosystems, Everglades Restoration, Biscayne Bay Recovery, and the Role of CERP, moderated by Marisa Carrozzo. Welcome, Marisa.
Thank you, Loren. Let's get the pen up. Okay, good morning, everyone. Thank you for being here, and I'm delighted to be here myself. Again, I'm Marisa Carrozzo. I'm with the National Parks Conservation Association, and on behalf of myself and the panel, thank you for joining us for Connecting Ecosystems, Everglades Restoration, Biscayne Bay Recovery, and the Role of CERP. South Florida's ecosystems are deeply interconnected, both upstream freshwater management in the Everglades all the way to the health of Biscayne Bay. So today's conversation is about those connections and how coordinated restoration efforts are improving water quality, ecological function, and long-term resilience across the system. So we'll also zoom in on one particularly critical effort, the Biscayne Bay and Southeastern Everglades Ecosystem Restoration Project, or BBCR, which represents a major opportunity to restore clean freshwater flow, improve bay health, and protect key lands that make restoration possible. BBCR is one of the most ambitious, comprehensive Everglades restoration plan projects and will not only deliver benefits to both Biscayne and Florida Bays, but it is also notably the first CERP project to explicitly incorporate sea level rise and coastal resiliency as primary goals, reinforcing that Everglades and Biscayne Bay restoration and climate resilience go hand in hand. Maximizing ecosystem benefits to both Biscayne Bay and Florida Bay without trading off benefits up to one at the expense of the other has been a critical goal throughout BBCR planning. The two bays are uniquely important ecosystems, and at the same time, that health and are intrinsically linked. So with that set up, we are fortunate to have an outstanding panel here today to take a deep dive into lessons learned through restoration efforts thus far and how they can inform integrated approaches in the future, accelerate recovery, and strengthen long-term environmental benefits for Biscayne Bay. So our speakers almost need no introduction today, but let me take a quick moment to introduce our panel. Loren Parra is the Director of the Department of Environmental Resources Management and Chief Resilience Officer for Miami-Dade County, where she leads county-wide efforts to protect natural resources and safeguard public health through science-based policy, regulatory compliance, and community-focused education. Bahram Charkhian is a lead environmental scientist at the South Florida Water Management District and has over 25 years at the district, where he has led water quality monitoring, restoration science, and compliance efforts supporting major initiatives like the Comprehensive Everglades Restoration Plan. He has also played key roles in projects including Biscayne Bay coastal wetlands. Dr. Erik Stabenau is Senior Restoration Scientist at the Everglades Foundation, where he leads and supports science-driven restoration planning. Prior to his current role, Dr. Stabenau was most recently Restoration Services Branch Chief at Everglades National Park, and he has overseen major restoration efforts across South Florida's national parks. Thank you all for being here today. Please give our panel a warm welcome. All right, so we're gonna dive into the first question. To ground us in today's challenges for Biscayne Bay, can you please share with us what are the most pressing challenges facing Miami-Dade County when it comes to resilience, water quality, and water supply? And how do those pressures show up specifically in Biscayne Bay? Loren, can we start with you?
Sure, thank you, and thank you everyone for incorporating what I think is just a really important part of the regional discussion when we talk about environmental restoration. It's hard to talk about Biscayne Bay water quality without seeing how that fits into the broader picture of Everglades restoration, so really grateful for this panel and the opportunity. I think for, my personal opinion is that oftentimes it feels like the pressures are happening faster than we can move on the solution. So I think you know, in a conference like this, you can see firsthand how many innovative things are happening, whether it's on the science or the advocacy, the policy. There is movement happening, you know, on a daily basis, but the stressors on the bay and on the environment are moving what feels like faster, and they're compounding. And so the rainfall is coming faster than we can absorb it. The septic tanks are leaking faster than we can pull down federal dollars to transition them. You know, development is happening faster than we can bear to plan and protect environmentally sensitive lands. And so for me, I feel like the challenge is always just speed, and how are we able to move faster so that we can do our best to respond to the compounding stressors on the environment.
Thank you, Loren. Bahram?
My side experience, sea level rise, when I do comparison around Biscayne Bay, especially near Biscayne National Park, and tidal fluctuation, and I've seen so much increase in a, you know, like a king tide, comparing to 20 years ago. And some of the roads, you know, they are usually during mid-tide to king tide, they are under the water, comparing to again before, it's getting worse. And availability of fresh water, this is another thing important for us to be able to divert and see improvement in the coastal wetland. Saltwater intrusion is another, and quality water. Those are important.
Bahram, can you? Oh.
Talking to the mic.
Okay. Yeah,
Oh, now it's off. Okay.
You're good.
Just hold close.
yeah, quality water is another key factor.
Thank you. Erik?
All right, well, thank you, and thank you to everyone for having us here today. It's very important to talk about South Florida water issues in the context of bigger water pie. I think that one of our biggest challenges right here related to speed of, you know, responding to these issues and dealing with climate change coming at us and sea level rise is somehow achieving balance in the system. And when I think of balance, I think of it in terms of recognizing what we need out of the bay, what society kind of expects out of the bay, and having this effort put in the right places, get those low-hanging fruit early and quickly, have a unified vision of where we're going, find a way to protect the homes, protect our quality of life, and enhance all of that by protecting our ecosystems, protecting our bay, and not doing that at the expense of like the other system behind us, the Everglades system behind us, making that all work together where it's balanced between people and the system, balanced between the different parts of the ecosystem that are out there, balanced in the way we spend our money and our time and our effort. So I think that's the biggest challenge, is seeking that balance.
Thank you all. And in keeping those challenges in mind, whether it's speed of restoration, whether it's sea level rise and balancing multiple ecosystems, we're also finding ourselves in a moment of real ecosystem project restoration momentum, especially with CERP, with some projects being completed, like BBCW, here in Miami, and others under construction, like the Everglades Agricultural Area Reservoir, and of course still more in planning, like BBCR that we already touched on. So what lessons have we learned from these completed restoration projects, like BBCW, for example, and how can those lessons inform future efforts to improve outcomes? And I'd love to hear from Bahram first on this.
It's working. Yeah, I have been involved in the Biscayne Bay Coastal Wetland Project, various activity over 20 years, and I could say we are lucky. We have been working with various staff from various agencies, such as Miami-Dade County, Miami-Dade County Park, Biscayne National Park, U.S. Army Corps, FDEP, NOAA, and other agencies that they are assisting us in terms of meeting project goals and objectives. Project has three components, and briefly, deer in a state, coastal wetland in the middle, and L31E near Biscayne National Park. So deer in a state, actually we initiate and work closely with Miami-Dade County, and we initiate and complete destruction of this component in 2012 and initiate the operation. One of the major issues at that time we had was pulse pumping that was not effective for the coastal wetland and near shore. So I did working with other staff pump tests. An objective was to compare pulse pumping versus continuous daily pumping. And so it took 2 years, but with a successful outcome. And that was one of the lessons that we learned from that component. And we are right now actually incorporating in a design and for other projects that we have. And another example is L31E flowway. We did a pump test because PDT, they recommended us one of the pump stations near Biscayne National Park on the intersection of C103 and L31E canal. They recommended 40 CFS pump, and they recommended direction of the pump and early benefit. So we did a pump test for 5 years to verify size, location, direction, and see whether or not that is the right size pump station to meet early benefit of project in the coastal wetland and near shore. So it was successful. As a result, we actually incorporated all of the information and result that we got from that pump test in a design of other pump station for Biscayne Bay coastal wetland and other projects, CERP projects that we are doing.
Thank you, Bahram. Erik, did you have anything you wanted to add?
Yeah, I think I think there's these moments we have to take our successes when they happen. And so there are things to learn. We had a project, Biscayne Bay Coastal Wetlands Project, and it was going to be a big project and take a long time for us to put all the pieces on the ground. But we knew certain parts of that very well. We knew where we needed a pump station, S700 near Deering Estate. We knew we needed the pump station. We had an idea of the size of that pump station. And so we went ahead and rolled out on getting that done before the Army Corps had even said, hey, we're starting this project on the ground. We were already building and running, and Bahram's out there in the process of testing that. So I think one of the things we learn is that there are these low-hanging fruit that you can jump on and you move pretty quickly. And one of the advantages of doing that is as soon as you do that, in a way, we're doing that other thing that's really critical and brought up in other conversations this morning. We're locking in that land space. We're preventing that land from being taken up by things that aren't for the environmental purpose. And so, in a way, it's this speed issue, moving quickly, gather those moments when we can, and then jump on those early wins and move and tell that story. Briefly, Bahram had called me up one day, and he said to me, very excited, about something. And I have to admit, I have a little bit of a hearing issue from maybe rock music as a teenager, but he tells this story, and he's going on, and I'm like, Bahram, please slow down. And he finally says it. He says, sawgrass. And I'm like, okay, sawgrass, yes. What are you talking about? And he says, sawgrass east of L31E. That just froze me. I don't know how well people know this here, but L31E is the boundary canal. East of that means saltwater. That doesn't have sawgrass. So this project had been moving water into a place that without us acting on it, the sawgrass just came. The system could respond, and it took off. And that was one of those early wins that comes from taking a piece of the project that we can do, that we know well, and do it. Get it done.
Thank you. Those are some important lessons learned and good benefits and outcomes from this project. So I think one theme here that we're already starting to hear a bit is connectivity, how these projects can work together to connect these ecosystems. So we do have these several restoration projects underway, like BBCR, like Southern Everglades study. How important is that connectivity among these systems to achieving meaningful and long-term benefits for the region as a whole? Loren, would you like to start?
Yeah, thank you. So, I mean, I think we all agree here, connectivity is sort of the backbone of resilience. So we know when one of these projects is successful, the environmental and ecological benefits aren't, they don't just stay within that basin. They expand outside of that project area. And so when several of our projects are moving at the same time, when we're seeing those levels of integration, we're actually, there's strength in the whole. There's obviously a better rebound across the whole system when we're able to better integrate all of these projects moving at the same time. And when you think about, the restoration of Biscayne Bay, we got lots of problems, right? We have the pollution problem, we have salinity issues, we have turbidity issues, and not a single one of the restoration projects that we're working on today is going to solve all of those issues. It's why it's so important for us to continue moving on the integration of all of these projects, because we know that we won't achieve the ecological restoration and the levels of health that we want to see in something like the Bay unless we're hitting all of those stressors that the Bay is seeing right now.
Absolutely. Bahram or Erik, would you like to weigh in? Microphone.
Oh, I'm sorry. Again, for Biscayne Bay Coastal Wetland, and I have been involved for a long time. It's really amazing to see as we divert the water, we could see, and actually we are recharging the groundwater, salinity in the coastal wetland, are meeting our restoration performance target, and near shore. Also, we see significant improvement in that area.
Thank you. Erik. Okay. We'll go on to the next question. The next question actually happens to be for you. So, in addition to ongoing pressures like climate change and sea level rise, pollution, salinity issues, there's another major challenge in Miami-Dade County, which is land use. And Miami-Dade County is facing increasing development pressure on lands identified for restoration. So why is it so important to protect these lands, especially in the context of projects like BBCR, for example?
The simplest answer there is when it's gone, it's gone. When we pour concrete, we don't get that piece of property back. And every time we do that, every time we move the urban development boundary or we pour that concrete on a new piece of development, new piece of open land, we limit the options that we can do, for restoration, for Everglades restoration purposes. There's a number of examples where the corridors that we have still available to us to move water are getting very narrow. And we're having these pressures that are saying, let's go ahead and develop just a little bit more here and a little bit more there, and missing that, opportunity to maintain the corridor that we can move water through for this season. We are living in the Everglades. Our water comes from the Everglades. The system around us is full of all the remnant marks of what was the Everglades, the flow paths that would naturally flood up and flow through the seasons. And then what we've done is built these systems right up against it, right in that tight environment, and we put very narrow constraints on what we allow that land to do, how far the water can climb, how far the water has to fall, how fast the water has to get off the landscape. So the more we lose pieces of that landscape, the more we're constraining ourselves in all the other actions that we do for managing water in the system. So in Everglades restoration, as you're seeing in the pictures here, we refer to like this master plan with just simple cross on the screen that says QQTD, quantity, quality, timing, and distribution. And when we limit the distribution pass, it starts to affect all the other things on that. It affects how fast the water has to move. It's messing with the timing. It affects how much water can get through it, messes with the quality of it. And it holds like how long it could be on a landscape. So it's so sensitive to the available space that we're building in. And It's not to say that development is the wrong way to go. It's saying that we need some smart developmental planning. If we're going to have any space to rebuild, build in. Other cities have done this transition and become very modern cities with a large built-in infrastructure back down towards the center core instead of the continuous sprawl out. This place is more in need of that thinking. Again, back to that balance where we think about what we expect from the environment and from how we live here and hitting that balance. So a lot of pieces in that, which is why I hesitated to speak a minute ago, because I can go long. But that's what I think. I think it's really important that we hold the land, because once it's lost, it's truly lost.
That's a really important point, and it does lead into the question that we have next, which is about local leadership. And what is that role? So I'm going to turn to Loren now and ask, how is Miami-Dade County helping ensure that restoration and land protection remain priorities?
I guess I'll ask the audience, has anyone heard of this application that's moving through Miami-Dade County? Maybe a couple of you have been following it. It's called Kelly Tractor, and Miami-Dade County Mayor, she worked to veto the project because she didn't feel like it met the needs that is outlined in our comp plan to actually do construction outside of the UDB. I think, yeah, round of applause for Mayor Daniela Vincava, thanks. It's no secret that these development pressures are coming. They're here. They're coming fast. And leadership really matters. And so we can do as much as we humanly can as far as operationalizing resilience. And so we have a really strong code. We have a very clear definition of what needs means. We have an extraordinary planning department. We have really smart zoning. I mean, all of these aspects are in place. That's not to say that they're flawless and there isn't room for improvement, but local leadership really matters on these issues. And so making sure that your electeds, people like Mayor Daniela Vincava, Mayor Higgins, are aware of the value of some of these lands and what, to Erik's point, smart development looks like is such a huge piece of the puzzle. So, I think from the county perspective, making sure that these environmental benefits, which are directly tied to the quality of life for people in Miami-Dade County, are at the forefront of these discussions, not an afterthought, right? Like when we're reviewing these projects, these applications, this isn't like the last thing that happens. On the contrary, it's part of the initial review. It's part of the lens through which we are looking at development across Miami-Dade County, not just outside the UDB, but inside the UDB as well. We want to make sure that we're not negatively impacting our neighbors. When we build something, you're not allowed to build something and design something that moves water from your house directly into your neighbor's house. Like we're thinking about all of these things. And so I think from the land acquisition, land planning, it's got to be at the forefront. It has to be a priority for leadership. And yeah, I'm very proud to work for Mayor Daniela Vincava.
Thank you, Loren. So I'd like to dig a little bit deeper into the science behind land protection. So Erik, kind of building on some of the themes that Loren just brought up, can you speak a little bit more to the importance of preserving open land, rather than impervious surfaces like concrete and development and stuff? And what does that do for aquifer recharge, our drinking water supplies, water quality, et cetera?
Okay, so first, just a quick follow-up on Loren's comment, and that means that our public leaders need to hear our voices. So the phrase that Dave will frequently say is always show up. And never go away. So stick with that. All right, on the science of this, so one of the things that happens when you replace an open landscape, grasses, land, rock, trees, this environments that are undeveloped with concrete, is you change the hydrology in that area. So a rainfall of an inch or two of water under some of our heavy summer events cannot go straight down into the aquifer through that landscape. It can't go through the concrete. And so it has to run off the concrete. And the more we built it, the more that runoff gets pushed into the neighbor's property and pushed into our canals. And so the capacity of our canals then get challenged. The dynamics of how that water reaches the bay. Normally, if you click a slide for me, I think we'll find one here. But normally, if we push water into the landscape, it would build up in the landscape out here behind us, out far to the west. It would build up across the landscape, push down into our porous aquifer beneath our feet, and pushes out to the bay, going up through groundwater seeps as well as across dispersed sections of the waterfront. And with development, it gets pushed into a canal, and the canal has to let a lot of water go out rapidly to keep the land behind it from flooding. So we don't end up with adding to the aquifer. We don't end up storing the water from the wet season into the dry season. And we don't end up pushing like additional head gradient, that's that additional water on top of the aquifer that pushes down and out and holds the salt water at bay. And so all of those things start to get more and more limited. And in just the reality of living next to it, if you're anywhere along that canal section and new development gets built all around the canal section upstream, your personal experience year to year will be that the canal's more flashy. It fills up higher, it drops faster, it moves quicker when these events happen because that land isn't doing the natural buffer behind it, behind the scenes and under our feet.
Thank you, Erik. So we've covered a lot of the big system questions. We've talked a bit about some of the specific projects, both the ones that have been completed and some in process, and some of the policy tools that we have in place. So let's take one more second to zoom back out and talk a little bit about how the county is approaching integration of all of these various pieces. And Loren, you already touched on this a bit, but can you speak a little bit more to what is being done to maintain momentum and, of course, public support for them?
Yeah, of course. So I think it's no secret there are changes happening at the federal level with prioritization of projects at the U.S. Army Corps. South Florida has been incredibly lucky to be the recipient of, I think, more Army Corps projects than basically any other portion of the country. And so our ability to keep the pressure on with the feds is directly tied to public support. It's not directly related to water quality. This is more about coastal storm surge, but I'm sure lots of you are familiar with the federal Back Bay study. And, when the Corps came down a couple years ago and said, hey, we're gonna build a big gray wall, and that wall is gonna help protect from coastal storm surge. And that is probably true, but everyone in Miami-Dade County, residents, electeds, developers, they all said, no, we're not doing that. And it was a loud enough cry that the Army Corps said, well, okay, let's go back to the drawing board and let's incorporate some nature-based solutions and let's value community input. So I can't stress enough how much public support matters when elected officials, when community leaders, when advocates are talking to our federal partners to say, our projects matter and you need to keep the focus on South Florida because we have more to lose here than basically any other portion of the country. So I think for us, it's making sure that some of our just core project leaders at the county, so people like Pamela Sweeney, who you heard from earlier this morning, people like Omar, who I think you'll hear from later today, and Christian Camerath, I don't know if he's here. I mean, making sure that the county is, got this bird's eye view of all the different projects that are happening in South Florida. So when our mayor goes to DC and says, hey, Colonel, this is important and this is why, we're just in a much better position to really narrate the integration that's happening here and the connectivity that we're talking about here, right? So it's not about just moving one project, because we know that when we move all of them together, we're gonna get a lot more of those compound benefits across the entire system.
Yeah, absolutely. The importance of so many different projects happening in one place, and to your point of keeping the pressure and the focus on them in the long term. I think I heard earlier about it being a marathon, not a sprint, and I think that absolutely applies in this case as well. Erik, I wanted to turn to you briefly to talk a little bit more about BBCER. I gave a very, very high-level overview of that project, and we've talked a little bit about, having lands necessary for that project. But could you talk a little bit about some of the important components of that project and what those will provide for Biscayne Bay?
All right, and I'm going to make an assumption for the audience here that you're probably not terribly familiar with the Biscayne Bay Southeastern Everglades Restoration Project. Yeah, I'm seeing some nods. So generally speaking, we're all aware that we have Everglades National Park and Biscayne National Park, and this little space between the two of them that is not in the national parks. Biscayne Bay Southeastern Everglades Restoration Project is combining a project that was aimed over to maintain and to add water to Everglades National Park on its furthest east panhandle, and another project that was looking to push all this water into Biscayne Bay to something I'll get at later, but basically to make real benefits to the bay with additional fresh water going to it. And to connect the dots on those two projects and finish what were the more complicated features that were to come. In Everglades restoration, really, we have to think about it as a sequence of actions. You can't go to the top of the system, pull the plug, and throw water south until you have somewhere to put it, right? These outlet projects, and that's what these ones are in my mind, these are outlet projects. They're projects that are designed to get the water out of the system safely so we can bring more water into the system safely and the homes stay dry, our feet stay dry. So this project is built up of a sequence of components that were probably all the more complicated parts of a couple earlier projects. They were the ones that required us to have bigger pump stations, to put into some canals and connect the dots across it, to have water preserve areas. These are areas where we can put water temporarily when we have excess in the wet season, when these really big rainfalls hit and when hurricanes hit. You can push water in there, and then as things go dry, you can bring water back off that landscape. And to do all of that while maintaining the water quality that gets to the bay, trying to basically restore a more natural distribution of water in Biscayne Bay, and for that matter down to Cart Sound and Manatee Bay and Barnes Sound, and eventually down to the eastern corner of what's considered Florida Bay at Long Sound, Little Blackwater Sound, Blackwater Sound. I'm looking at faces to see who's familiar with these locations, and it's neat. There's quite a few of you know this waters quite well. So this project has a couple major features that need to be taken care of. One of them is the southern end of the C-111 canal. It's a major drain system, but it's also a major inflow area where you can have salt water push back up in the system. So before big storms come, we pull the plug at the C-111 canal and push as much fresh water out of the system as we can. It's one of the safety mechanisms we have to keep our homes dry. That's what we needed. This project allows us to think of other ways to get the water off the landscape, even in those emergency situations, and not need that canal. And by closing that canal, we get rid of a point discharge of just blasting fresh water out that gets caught up in a tidal cycle or two and it's gone to the coastal ocean, to putting that water across the landscape and having benefits from the same volume of water for months instead of days. And I think that that's a really important aspect of the project. There's a few other parts of the project further upstream that are also water preserve areas. They're landscapes that we allow the water to flow through and sit on top of. They recharge the aquifers. They allow that water to be moved. We have places that are in the Pensuco Bird Drive Basin and on the western side of Miami that allow that water to get moved down through the system as well. So those are really, from our perspective, some of the biggest, most important components of it. But that's not to belittle the little things. There's culverts and pumps and all these little pieces that are necessary infrastructure to move things around. And going back to where I opened with, if you see one of those and know it's in all the alternatives and know it's in a tentatively selected plan this fall, go for it. Get that land in place, get that pump moving, get that project underway. So, that help?
Yes, thank you very much, Erik. I think that these big projects and us talking about how we need to keep the focus and the momentum going, and the public engagement aspect of it, where we're talking about something called BBCR. It's not the most publicly accessible type of commentary. And how do you translate these complex projects to the public in such a way, and also to elected officials, of course, because we need the funding, we need the political will to keep this going. What are some lessons learned from the perspective of anybody on the panel today about the best ways to make the case for these?
I'm looking to Bahram because I think he's had some interesting wildlife sightings at the Deering Estate, and I'm kind of prompt him to tell us a little bit about that.
Maybe the sawfish?
For BBC, I'm hoping that we will be able to initiate and complete expedited component of BBC. That's going to help us a lot by installing some forward pumping. For example, we have one manual structure, S121 on Kendall Drive, to divert the water from Snapper Creek in C2 Basin towards C4 Basin and C100 Basin, then divert it in such a way that we could divert the water further south toward new component of BBC and also Deering Estate. In some of the component of the Biscayne Bay coastal wetland, such as Cutler coastal wetland, we just finished the construction. That's going to come. We are doing operation of testing. So very soon we are going to be able to divert the fresh water up to 400 cubic feet per second through a line channel and a very long spreader in a coastal wetland in uniform distribution of sheet flow toward the coastal wetland and Biscayne Bay to see improvement in the coastal wetland and near shore of the Biscayne Bay. And also L31E near Biscayne National Park, we just in the process of completing one component there called North Canal Freshwater Wetland, 400 acres. So that would give us more ability to be able to divert freshwater, maintain, divert, recharge the groundwater to our shoreline.
Thank you. Did either Loren or Erik want to weigh in? We have only a few more minutes left, and
I'm happy to chime in. I think when we talk about translating the just complexity and the benefits and the importance of these projects, you just have to center residents and the lived experience of people in this community. You have to be culturally relevant. I am a proud Everglades Foundation alum, so I'm happy to gas them up, but it is no secret that Everglades restoration has been one of the most successful environmental restoration projects in the country. And it is in no small part because of the way that we talk about Everglades restoration. The idea that we are tying these investments and these projects to our drinking water supply, which is a top line message that I know was really fueled by a coalition of Everglades groups. I mean, that's brilliant. That is easy to understand. It is digestible. It is something that an elected official or a resident can easily understand and get behind. So I think when you think about prioritizing these projects, communicating them, the cultural relevance matters. We just had a very successful bonanza here at the county. It was the first time that we had cleanup sites in all 13 of our county commission districts. And I will say, being in the uplands, being super west, we got our elected officials out there, and it was so meaningful for them to see us and residents cleaning up and us showing them, hey, this canal that runs through your park all the way, out west is directly tied to the health of Biscayne Bay. They didn't know, and it matters so much to meet people where they are and to just, again, I don't tire of saying this, being culturally relevant. So kudos to all the organizations that are doing that every day, because it's the only thing that will make the groundswell support that we need.
thank you.
And just last thought on it was just there's fun storytelling, and you've heard a little bit from me here about the ideas of keeping your feet dry for flood purposes. The Europe water comes from the Everglades, as we've been hitting on that message, and there are benefits in the coastal waters that are just part of your personal experience of being out on the water and being in the bay. Healthy mangroves and clean water and better fishing and all of those experiences, I think they're really personal. So part part of it is encouraging people to recognize, as we, again, messaging, we're living in the Everglades, so recognizing that you're in the Everglades and seeing that experience around you. A little tight.
Thank you. And so I have one final wrap-up question for the panel. And I'd ask each of you to look ahead, say 5 years from now. What is one restoration success or milestone for Biscayne Bay that you would most like to see accomplished? Loren, would you like to start?
So 5 years from now, my milestone is that we will have a very strong Biscayne Bay report card. So we released our annual report card yesterday. There's a couple of stories out. Shout out to all the media outlets that are helping us uplift these stories, because again, they matter. We haven't seen major degradation from last year, and we actually have even seen a few improvements across the northern portions of the bay. We're seeing some return of seagrass, which Omar, I think, will talk about a little bit later today. But 5 years from now, if we're able to see continued improvements, we know that a strong return of seagrass means a strong water clarity, probably healthy salinity. It's just one of those indicators that we're achieving real health along the bay. So for me, our milestone is hopefully a very strong Biscayne Bay report card 5 years from now.
Fantastic. Bahram?
A milestone for most of the project and that we are managing mostly BBCW is meeting project restoration performance target, be able to refine operation in such a way that we meet our salinity target, we see freshwater species in the coastal wetland, see improvement in near shore of the Biscayne Bay with the vicinity of our projects.
That's actually meeting the report card requirements too, I think. Wonderful. Erik?
On the same theme, in the northern part of the bay, to stop seeing the algal bloom issues that we're dealing with, water quality hits that show up in the report card in the north. So to see those areas get better, greener colors on the report card would be very nice. And in the southern part of the bay with the restoration program, to me, my personal career line has been aimed at tying together the dry seasons, so that we have enough water in storage and we're delivering clean, fresh water through the dry season, so that we're always maintaining under the restoration-related objectives, some portion of mesohaline, that mid-salinity waters along the coastline throughout the year, instead of going fully marine each year. When we start tying together those dry seasons and don't lose the mesohaline habitat in the winter, we're going to see the fish abundance just explode. We're going to see the diversity in the seagrass beds move away from dense thalassia to mixed beds, and I think we're going to see a lot of other aspects that are just going to really, the bay's going to come to life, really come to life much, and that's something I'd really like to see in our 5-year period, and I think we're well on the path to do that. We've got the EAA reservoir, so additional water and storage going to be online in just 3 years, so that clock's ticking, and we got to keep working at it.
Thank you all. This was a great conversation. Really, really appreciate your time and your expertise here today. And can we please give them a big round of applause?